Welcome back to the Non-League Paper's Non-League GOALMOUTH. I'm Matt Badcock, the editor-at-large of the Non-League Paper, and I'm joined by Mark Carruthers and a new face on our YouTube channel this week, Andy Simpson, who's been covering non-league for many, many years, has covered all sorts of ups and downs. I'm sort of thinking back to your Northwich Victoria days. Yes. And yes, generally a very, very well-respected and considered journalist on the non-league scene. And we're very happy to have you, Andy. Thanks for joining us, mate.
That's a lovely introduction. In fact, I worked out this morning, this is going to be my 20th season covering non-league. I don't know if that qualifies me for a testimonial and whether anyone would turn up. But yeah, it makes me feel very, very old more than anything.
All I know is that that's not as long as me, so it makes me feel...
okay, that makes me feel better.
That makes me feel quite good. Mark, how many years have you been?
I feel quite young now. I'm fine. You two crack on talking old fellas here. No, well, I think it'll be 14 years for me, but it's really interesting that Simo was there in the first game I covered.
I was,
which was Witten Albion against Blyth Spartans. On a very, very sunny day at Winsham Park.
Yes, you don't get many of them, so that's why you remember it.
I do. And also the last. Of course, yeah. But no, I don't mind saying Simo is probably one of my best mates in journalism. A good guy, and we've had many a chat over many different subjects, including darts, of course. But we're not here to talk about that.
Well, we can do a bit of darts. Later. We've got to get to the National League Cup as well, so we'll talk about that after the National League Cup. But yeah, I met Simo we met down at Chertsey, didn't we? Obviously, I've been talking for years and reading your stuff for many years, but we finally met down at Chertsey a few years ago in the FA Vars semi-final.
Yeah, you're right. I've kind of got a love-hate relationship with FA competitions because I've seen Northwich Victoria get to the semi-finals of the FA Trophy and the FA Vars and fall agonisingly short. I followed 1874 Northwich. They got to the semi-finals of the FA Vars, fell agonisingly short. So it's kind of tinged with pain some of these cup runs. But yeah, that was an epic. Epic run. Well, you don't get many of them, but it was a brilliant afternoon, wasn't it? It was a great game.
Yeah, it went all the way to penalties, didn't it?
Yeah.
It was good. I mean, is the regret that you haven't been to Wembley because Mark always talks about how good the food is on non-league finals?
Yeah, it's a bit of a sort of subject. I mean, the Vic's FA Trophy semi-final defeat was to Kidderminster, and the final that year was the first one at the new Wembley. So there was kind of an extra incentive. It was a brilliant semi-final, kind of swung both ways, and kind of like as it slowly dawned in the second half of the second leg that Kiddie were going to get through. That was quite a sobering moment, kind of missing out on a trip to Wembley. So yeah, I have to kind of live vicariously through Mark's adventures there.
Does anyone talk about how good the food is at Wembley? Because I don't remember that conversation, if I'm honest.
I think it's not too bad, is it? It's pretty good.
I had a lasagna that was decent once, so I'll go with that.
Is that when they had the dough balls as well?
Yeah. Sorry, we should really crack on.
We've gone very sort of self-entitled journalists there, haven't we? Talking about how good the food is, and it really annoys people that you sort of like, and quite rightly so, to be honest, because you're getting in free and then you're expecting something to eat. So that's why we keep it real at non-league grounds, where we don't get anything. So, but how's the season started for you boys? What games have you been to so far? I know you've both been out, and now the proper stuff has started.
Well, I hate to be the bringer of bad news, but not many, because I've just got back from holiday and I was asked to cover one of the North East Premier League clubs in pre-season. So I've kind of not been to as many friendlies as I wanted. And I was at my first competitive game last night in the FA Cup at Wickham played against Bishop Auckland. And the game was effectively ended after about 15 minutes when Wickham had a man sent off and Bishop Auckland won 5-0. So not much of a contest, but I'll be at Gateshead against Southend, reliving the worst game of football I've seen in my life. And hopefully it'll be a better one this time round, because the game on the last day of last season, I just about woke up from it when we got on holiday. It was that boring. So, yeah. But that's it. Just one.
Simo, you've probably been about 8 already, haven't you?
Well, it's a good job I was busy last weekend then, wasn't it?
I was going to say, because I was on holiday last week as well, so I'm sort of in Mark's back, but I've not seen any because I didn't manage to actually get out to an FA Cup game. I was praying for a result, sort of, replays and things closer to me, and I really needed I sort of get on well with a couple of people down at Newmarket Town, but I did need them to draw against Heacham on Saturday, so I could have popped along to that on Tuesday night around sort of childcare stuff and all that kind of thing. But so yeah, I'm in the 0 camp so far. But go on, Sim. Are you?
So I did a doubleheader, FA Cup doubleheader last weekend. I went to watch Bootle play 1874 Norwich on Friday night. The Battle of the Brothers that we previewed in the previous edition. But I also thought, I might see the earliest ever FA Cup goal, because obviously it was only the 1st of August. But I think in the end it was scored elsewhere, wasn't it? It was scored at Pickering Town. So I missed out on that. But still saw a decent cup tie. Side note, Friday night football very much on the resurgence in the Northwest. I think it's kind of across the board, but really noticeable how more clubs are trying and playing on a Friday night. Bootle absolutely benefited. There was a much bigger crowd than normal. Had a nice round to spot the manager, so everybody kind of obviously was desperate to go out and watch a game. I think we're going to see more of that this season. And also, speaking to clubs, like there's lots of these requests flying around to kind of change fixtures. Not everyone gets their own way, but it's definitely a noticeable trend. And then on Saturday, I was at Runcorn and it's in Clitheroe, which kind of I was pitching as the tie of the round. Certainly in this neck of the woods, 2 Step 4 teams with very lofty ambitions this season to get promoted from the Northern Premier League West Division, or certainly run very, very close. Seems everyone seems to have crowned Bury. And do you know what? I loved it. It was a real kind of old-fashioned cup tie. It was a little bit niggly, tetchy. I think everyone's kind of fed up of friendlies at this point and just really wanted to get stuck into each other. Runcorn were deserving winners, but it was just great to see a cup tie where people were kind of really going for it. The other theme, I don't know how you guys feel about this, has cropped up loads in conversations I've had in the last couple of weeks, is having an FA Cup game as your first competitive game of the season. People kind of split on it. Some people don't mind it. Some it's like focused mind straight away. Some people absolutely hate it. It's a high stakes game, and if you lose, it's a pretty miserable place to be going into your first league game, which is kind of sums up how Clitheroe felt last Saturday after going out. But Runcorn were on a high of brilliant springboard into our first league game on the back of an FA Cup win. So maybe your answer to that question depends on whether you win or not, but it's definitely something people have got an opinion on.
So I've had a number of managers speak to me who are in the NPL and have said they think it's an unfair advantage to Step 5 clubs that they've played 1 or 2 competitive fixtures before playing an FA Cup game, whereas their first competitive fixture is in the FA Cup. And just feeling it kind of gives, I mean, it's great for us, isn't it? Because it kind of increases the chances of a shock result, I guess, which is what we're at FA Cup games for at the end of the day. And I think there's some serious consideration to be given to that, where they're kind of closer to being at that peak level of fitness at an earlier stage than Step 4 clubs. So I think there is something in it, but at the same time, you do wonder if it's an excuse in the making, really. As much as I hate the accused manager of that, you just wonder if, there's your excuse ready for you. But I think, and obviously I wrote about it last week about, the FA Cup this is where the romance is now in the competition. It's fair enough for Palace last season. There was some excitement, some romance in the fact they won it for the first time. But I think when we look at what we cover, that's where the real romance is, isn't it? It's the FA Cup runs we see non-league clubs having. It's Jose Mourinho turn up at Marine on a very cold Sunday afternoon. It's that, the horrible cliches that we all bring about, certainly national press bring with, when it's the postman delivering a shock win and stuff like that. It's all those cliches. But I just love the FA Cup. I love the fact it's back so early as well. And there's always something to go on, isn't there?
Yeah, I agree. I think the true rounds of the competition, the true heart of the competition is in the early rounds. Right through, into the competition proper. And I can't work out where we are with it, because it's kind of, I don't know, is it kind of an easy thing that as journalists we sort of say, well, there's no magic in the cup and it's like an easy intro, do you know what I mean, sometimes, and such and such a club are bringing the romance back, because from the people I speak to every single year, and I'm sure you boys are the same, it means so much to people to have this, to be part of it, to score in the same competition as all these other players will later on. You see the sort of the golden boot every year, where invariably it's a non-league player who scores the most goals throughout the competition. And I just think there's so many, when people say there's this sort of like wider opinion that people don't care about the FA Cup. I feel like, you know, the number of clubs that are playing in it matters to them. The large majority of people playing football and watching football in this country, you know, through these rounds. That's sort of kind of what I think, really.
I think if you ask supporters across all levels, the FA Cup is still very much kind of what they want to win. You know, it's still special no matter where they are, Premier League or Championship, wherever. But I think what's kind of hurt the competition at the top end is the fact that, and I said this in the piece, that the money in the Champions League, the money at the top end of the Premier League is so vast now that the FA Cup's almost become kind of second rate. So I think it's clubs that have done it damage, not supporters. I think, you know, I can say this as a sort of someone who follows a club in the Premier League as well, that it would mean everything if that club was to win the FA Cup. I was brought up on stories of cup wins in the 50s and, you know, going to Wembley in the 70s and stuff like that. And I think it's the clubs themselves and the managers that have made these decisions that have really made the competition now into more where again, I'll say it, the romance and the magic and all that is provided by clubs that we cover.
Yeah, I think there's that round where it's like a midweek round and stuff like that. I just can't sort of stand that. You know, Boreham Wood a few years ago went up to Everton, and that was played on like a Thursday night. I think it was like a 8:05 kickoff or something random like that. And it's just like, that's the sort of the frustration. And you know, you kind of want the FA to really sort of protect their own competition, but obviously they're getting pulled from pillar to post by sort of the people who are powerful, aren't they? So, and you know, it comes back into the replays debate and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's. I think when the games actually kick off, though, and they're being played, everyone just, you know, it has that sort of something a bit different about it, doesn't it, for sure, in the FA Cup?
Yeah, it's genuinely unique. Like, other countries look on the FA Cup in admiration because they just don't have the same value in their competitions. We don't see. So the closest maybe is the French Cup. We do see some amazing stories in their kind of version of the FA Cup. But I would say apart from that, and even that isn't quite the same as what we've got with the depth of teams. And we've got the biggest ever entry this season, I think. Nothing else, certainly in Europe, comes close to that, and we should fight hard to kind of cherish and protect that. I think we do in NonLeague. I think we absolutely do that. But some of the points Mark was making about kind of how people look on it at the top end of the game is maybe where it's lost a little bit of its shine, but it still has that kind of unique place in world football, I think. I mean, people from other countries will watch FA Cup ties. I don't think people in the UK are watching Coppa Italia or Coupe de France ties, frankly. So there is that element to it as well.
Yeah, I think from all the sort of the big memories that I have from you know, being in this job, you know, a large majority of them are FA Cup games, whether that's a team winning or not, or running a team close. I think, you know, that is the, you know, my sort of big memories because of the build up when you're speaking to people, how much it means, and then also the actual day and the occasions when people are, you know, maybe I remember going to Portland Rovers years ago when Norwich City came down. They did get pumped, I think 7-0, I think it was in the end, and Chris Martin scored 4. But, you know, just being there and seeing all the, you know, the Norwich coach sort of turning up and, you know, all the excitement, it was brilliant, doesn't it? It's not just the sort of the upsets and the shocks that you remember. It's kind of everything around it, and the stories as well. Like you're saying with the brothers last week, it's just unique, isn't it? It's great.
Yeah, definitely. My first ever game as a Cup reporter was an FA Cup first round tie. Topically, actually, it was Morecambe against Norwich Victoria at the old Morecambe's old ground at Christie Park. Vicks won that day. Paul Brayson scored a hat-trick, somebody that Mark knows. And as an introduction to kind of following non-league football, it was amazing for the kind of real eye-opener for me. Jim Harvey was a manager at Morecambe at the time. And let's say kind of waiting for the two managers to come out after Morecambe had been upset by Vicks was, again, quite an eye-opener for a young reporter listening to Jim Harvey absolutely rip his team limb from limb. And there's a really funny moment when he kind of appeared around the dressing room door and all these journalists are outside. He's like, "Oh, I'm really sorry, fellas, I'll be with you in 5 minutes." Then carried on finishing, tearing his team apart. It was like, wow, is this what it's going to be like? I was kind of like quite high bar to set for being my first game. And Vicks went on to reach the third round that season. They played Sunderland away from home. So it was a kind of like, you know, really spoiled first season, kind of covering the FA Cup to cover a run like that and see games like that. So yeah, it definitely sticks with you.
Yeah. Who was Norwich manager then?
Norwich manager then was Steve Burr.
I was going to say, was it Burr? Steve Burr?
Yeah.
So much to make you feel old once again. Paul Brayson's son has just signed his first professional deal at Newcastle.
Oh, wow.
Should we just turn it off now and just have a nap? Because we're probably all tired, aren't we?
Yeah. This is what see last time we spoke about being grumpy old men. So let's keep it going.
That does make me feel old. What a player Brassy was. Great guy. Wonderful, wonderful player. Was still one of my favourite players I've ever seen playing NonLeague. So, yeah, good memories.
And we're still playing until about 2 years ago as well, which is remarkable.
Yeah, it's amazing how some people go on. I think they sort of get on the cod liver oil early or something, don't they? But one thing that you sort of I found sort of interesting, you tweeted about the other day, Simo, was about the subs.
Yeah.
And sort of 5 subs, and obviously now we're sort of seeing that increase in subs sort of right further down, and sort of kind of the stoppage in play. Sort of...
Yeah, I mean, I thought it sparked more of a debate. But look, interestingly, on X, you can see people who like your posts. Loads of managers and coaches have liked it, which did make me chuckle. So there's maybe is the kind of the growing kind of thoughts about this. I mean, it's been implemented a little bit piecemeal in non-league, hasn't it? Because there's some resistance in the Northern Premier League, for example. It took longer to introduce there, whereas we had it in the Northwest Counties League at step 5 in this neck of the woods. And the kind of argument against 5 subs was teams felt it would favour clubs with bigger budgets, 5 superstars on the bench and could change games. And I think that's a completely legitimate argument, but I think we kind of moved beyond that now, and I think managers quite like having the options of 2 extra substitutes, irrespective of what their budget is and what their squad is. It probably helps them to keep lads happy as well. Let's have it right. It can give more playing time to people. What's been really noticeable to me, because in the semi-pro game we don't have these 3 windows to make the changes that we've got used to in like the Premier League and the Champions League and all the top leagues in Europe, is we have the potential for 10 stoppages in a game if both teams want to use kind of their maximum of 5 substitutes. And even if you do kind of this rule of thumb of 30 seconds added on for each substitution, we're kind of automatically booking an extra 5 minutes into games. And there's an example at the Bootle game last week. Bootle scored the 96th and the 98th minute to kind of massage the score to win 4-0. And I'm not saying for a second the referee added on time that he shouldn't have. I think it was legitimate. But the final whistle went in the 99th minute, and we're kind of entering this realm now of having to prepare teams to play 100-minute matches. And you've also got the associated thing of kind of, it just gets really bitty. I mean, we hate it in friendlies, don't we, when we see only 10 million substitutions. And I'm not digging any managers out here. These are the rules. You can bring on a sub whenever you want. I just wonder if a little bit of a rethink there and going to having the kind of windows to make the changes will be better for everybody. I mean, even within that, half-time doesn't count as a window, so technically you've kind of got 4 windows. So it's still, I think, a fair amount of flexibility to make the changes. I don't know whether you guys have spotted this. It was really noticeable in that game, but it's been noticeable in other games as well. And I just wonder whether that is something that we can nick from the pro game. And most people, I hope, would think, yeah, that's a good idea. Who wants to see 10 substitutions in the second half? I know that I don't, but yeah, it was something that I thought I'd throw out there and see what people think about it.
I do remember there was a game I was at last season at Hebburn, and there was some confusion about whether the 3 window thing was in or not. And this was literally as the game's going on. There's a conversation with the referee's assistant and the referee in the middle as the game's going on around him about whether, I'm certain it was Hebburn, and it may have been Macclesfield, could make another substitute or not. And this is in the middle of the season, and you're thinking, like, how do people not know this? And it turned out that the coaching staff were correct, and the officials on the pitch weren't, which I thought was hilarious in itself. So, but I think there's a lot of stuff at the top end of the game that wouldn't fit the non-league game, and shouldn't be implemented. But I think with this one, it absolutely should. I think it's the best way to do things, where you have this 3 or 4, as you said, Simo, sort of periods where you can make subs, or 4 separate periods. Sorry, but I do also buy into the argument that it suits clubs with bigger budgets more than those who, the haves and have-nots, if you want to call them that. Because I just think we'll see more of the clubs that do have the funding, where they'll have a squad of 23, 24 players, and they'll just use all, like you said, superstars on the bench, whereas the other ones are maybe relying on, lads who are just making the way in the game at 16, 17, trying to get them game time. And I just, no, but I think in terms of what we're saying about the 3 or 4 sort of separate periods to make subs, that is something we should implement just to help the flow of the game more than anything.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the flow is the big key. If you want people in watching your game, they don't watching your sport. You don't want all these sort of constant stoppages, especially where people are using it tactically. And again, as you say, quite rightly, we all would do it, wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you kind of to tactically sort of wind down the clock and break up play? But and there is the good side of it where it is giving more players opportunities to play. But as you say, the flip side is the clubs are able to sort of stockpile up a bit, and you've got players in tracksuits watching the game because they're sort of they're saving them for Tuesday to be on the bench there, kind of thing. And that's not great. But I kind of don't really understand why it's not 3 windows. I don't really, maybe it's a question we need to ask somewhere, because there probably is a reason. I can't believe that it wouldn't have been discussed or voted upon, or however it's come around. I just can't see that it would have been like, oh, we've forgotten to put that bit in, because it kind of came in the higher up in the first place, didn't it? So
yeah, I mean, to counter like Mark's point about refs, I mean, we have seen examples like where kind of there'll be a referees who are moving between levels, and when the rules are different, you can kind of see how they get themselves in a bit of a muddle. And we've seen 1 or 2 examples where people have been sent to a sin bin in a game where these sin bins don't apply, for example. And so having it as uniform as possible is a good thing in that respect. I'm not kind of here to stick up for all refs, but I do kind of have some sympathy if you kind of, right, I ref the game on a Tuesday night, step 5, and this is what applies, and I've been pulled up to do a step 4 game, and it's different. I think we have to be a little bit careful about that. But I think at the same time, you're spot on. We can't just kind of imprint everything that goes on in the pro game into non-league, because we kind of it is a different beast.
Yeah, I think I know I've been confused at games about the sin bin thing before. An FA Cup game. I think it was last season, and the defender was just giving the referee all sorts, and he got booked. And I'm thinking, why did you not just stuck him in the sin bin? And it's like, oh, there's no sin bins at that. It was sort of the first one of the real times I've really thought, actually, you really need to go off this pitch, because you're like winding everybody up there.
Yeah.
But because the other thing that drives people potty is the competition specific yellow cards for FA competitions. But if you're sent off, you serve your ban. If it's a multiple game ban, you'll serve your ban in league and cup games. I mean, when I say it all the time, you couldn't pay me enough money in the world to be a club secretary, and that's the sort of reason why on earth is that the case? I mean, that is probably trying to nick something from the pro game or Champions League as specific yellow cards and things like that. But if you're an administrator trying to keep track of this stuff, it's an absolute nightmare. And then obviously county cup games are completely different altogether, not classed as first team fixtures. So we do set ourselves up to fall sometimes in non-league, which is quite frustrating.
Well, yeah, there's already been Guernsey have already been kicked out of the FA Cup, haven't they, for an ineligible player?
Yeah.
Already in the straight away. I know that's different from like the sort of suspensions things, but there's going to be more stories. It's not going to be. Yeah. They're not a surprise, are they? Frankly, and now we all know what's going to happen. It's like, oh, this has happened. This guy's been charged. It's like, well, let's just get on with it, because we know they're not going to win the appeal. It's a bit of a minefield, really. Go on, Mark.
This is why I've got so much sympathy with club secretaries, where when these things do happen, these guys get bad.
Yeah.
Supporters who maybe don't see what goes on behind the scenes, or how complicated issues like this are. And these are guys generally who'll be volunteers who probably have a job during the day, and then they're trying to deal with all these issues at the club on the night time, or after work, or during work breaks, or whatever. And I feel so much sympathy with everything. There must be a way to standardize or simplify everything, where, as you say, the different sort of suspension rules for competitions and all this, it must be a nightmare. You just tangle yourself up in knots.
Yeah, and probably going to be, the way the world's changed, isn't it? Volunteers, people don't volunteer the same way. We're a sort of a 24/7 world now, where people are working all, through weekends and don't have as much time to sort of give up. And volunteers are going to be, we speak to people in the game. They know that there's been lots of drives towards us, isn't there, to increase volunteers. But keeping people regularly involved in clubs is not easy, and it's going to be a problem. That's the one thing I worry about non-league football going forward. the people who to turn off the lights, is there going to be somebody there to turn off the lights at the end of the day? Because, you know, people just don't have the same sort of time and inclination, I think, in some cases. But one thing, Simo, you sort of mentioned as well was kind of about going back to sort of the dissent and the sin bins, is the captain speaking to the referees.
Yeah.
You've seen that in action, have you?
I've not seen it in action yet, and it seems to kind of gone under the radar, which is why I've called the FA and said, "Is this happening?" Like I've heard people talking about it. There's not been any publicity. There's not kind of been any awareness campaigns that this is the thing. But clubs have been. It has been communicated to clubs that there's kind of going to be only the captain's guidelines this season. And for those people who maybe watch rugby union, it's kind of mimicking that, where it's going to be encouraged that only the captain speaks to the referee after a decision is made, and kind of the referee will explain to the captain or a nominated player. There's kind of some flexibility. The goalie's your captain; he can nominate an outfield player to kind of be the guy that goes and speaks to the ref, and they'll kind of this could be one-on-one communication. And it's trying to stamp down a little bit. I mean, I still think dissent is an issue. I did wonder when they did the trial for the sin bins a few years ago whether there might be a ripple effect, and we see that implemented higher up in non-league, if not the pro game. It doesn't seem to have really happened. It's still kind of, you go, Mark will know this, you go and see step 5 and step 6 games, amateur games, I see refs using it, but certainly not as much as when it first came in. So I don't know if kind of this is a substitute for that. I need to kind of dig a bit deeper. The kind of people like, well, sin bins aren't really the thing, so we'll have a go at it's only the captain's guidelines. And I was saying to Matt this morning, I used to cover a lot of rugby union in my previous jobs. This is something I saw kind of live and in action. There is the cliches about people being more respectful to the referee in rugby and things like that, but that is a cliche and it's also true. They also had a rule in rugby where if you gave back chat to a referee after he'd given a penalty, you'd move the ball forward 10 metres. And I've seen games turn on being able to kick a 3-point penalty. It absolutely is a deterrent to dissent, because it can cost you dearly. I'm not necessarily an advocate for that in football at this stage, but I do think trying to still stamp down on this surrounding the referee, getting in the ref's face, it's so tedious that I'm really intrigued to see kind of how this goes this season, and whether we see refs really kind of giving it a go and seeing how people respond to it. But it's been a low-key launch, let's put it that way. But I spoke to the FA and they said it's being introduced uniformly in England in all competitions. So keep an eye out for that in the coming weeks to see if people start to implement it. I'm definitely going to be watching for it.
Yeah, I think I will be now as well. I mean, I don't know whether it's because, you know, generally the crowds are a bit smaller at step 5, but I find, you know, the dissent can be sort of worse because you can sort of hear it probably. But yeah, it is boring. It's boring.
It's really boring.
And it's just like, just get on and play, please. But there we go. So the season is upon us with the league. Obviously, as I said, step 5 and 6 have kicked off. We've had some FA Cup. Steps 1 to 4 get underway this weekend. Finally, who are you sort of looking forward to seeing this season, or going to be keeping your eyes on?
I'll pick 2 if it's all right. Just to be greedy. First up, South Shields with a new manager in there in the National League North. I think everyone would say last season was a poor one, really poor, given the sort of bottom half finish in the National League North. But Ian Watson going in, having served his time as an assistant manager under Mike Williamson at Gateshead, Carlisle and MK Dons, his first chance to be the lead role in the dugout, with a good experienced assistant with Carl Magnay, and some really exciting signings. Obviously experience with Robbie Tinkler going in there from Gateshead, who obviously Ian knows very well. Kaden Kelly could be one to watch, who's just been released by Sunderland, has gone into to South Shields. But it's more the way the style of play is implemented I'm looking forward to seeing, because Ian, through his time at Gateshead and Carlisle and MK Dons, has always preferred to have that sort of high intensity, high press style of play. So I'm just intrigued more than anything to see how that is kind of implemented onto this South Shields squad. Now, they did kind of play that style last season, but I feel as if it's going to be taken to another couple of levels under Ian and Carl. So I'm fascinated by that one. The other one, and I say this given I'm about to interview Adam Nicholson in about 25 minutes, I'm looking forward to see how Stockton react to the situation that occurred last season. We're kind of tying in what we talked about before with secretaries and such like. Stockton, and again, I've said it on this last time I was on, have been one of the stories of the North East non-league scene. You know, these promotions, 5-6 promotions in the space of sort of 10 years, with a core of players that have been there for that amount of time, really, and stayed with the club. Adam, for example, has made over 600 appearances and has come from the Teesside League and the Wayside League to just compete with touching distance of promotion into the National League North. So I'm really fascinated to see how they bounce back from that situation. They've added to the squad. They'll be there or thereabouts this season. I've got no doubt about it. But it's more the other side of it. How are they going to react on and off the pitch? You know, how is the club's mentality going to kind of develop over the coming weeks and months? And seeing how they fare this season. But I fancy both sides to do well in the respective leagues.
Yeah, you sort of imagine what that was like for them last year to then get all the way through as they did, get into the final, and then that sort of news to kind of filter out after the game, you know, and just like we're saying, a mistake that kind of, you know, we see made, and it's just so unfortunate that it was at that time of the year.
But even that situation was a little bit, well, it's very difficult, obviously, because you had where the club were being told, oh yeah, sorry, you can play, and then the FA system's telling them, oh no, he's going to be suspended. And there was that's where I had massive sympathy for the club, because they're going off an official FA disciplinary website where it's saying his ban doesn't start until the final, I think it was. So they played him midweek, and then all of a sudden they get told, oh, I shouldn't have played him. So there is sympathy there, a great amount of sympathy for the club. And, you know, I know people at Stockton well, and I know how hard they work behind the scenes to get everything right. They generally do things in the right way, in the kind of professional manner you would expect. So I felt for them. And I think that's why, look, knowing people at the club, from playing staff to coaching staff to volunteers, there will be a massive determination this season to move on from that. And the potential at Stockton Town is arguably as big as anything in the Northeast, because Stockton as a town is a big place. You know, yes, they've got Middlesbrough on their doorstep, but the room for growth within Stockton is huge. So, yeah, as I say, really fascinating to see what happens this year.
It's kind of one of those stories you want to write as a journalist as well, isn't it? You know, that sort of that arc.
Yes.
Kind of of the down to the up to the success. So you never know, you might be writing that one come April, May time.
I hope so.
Simo, who are you looking out for, particularly this sort of opening part of the season?
Like Mark, I'm gonna pick two, but Ever the Diplomat, they're kind of big rivals, so I can't get stuck for that one and not the other for saying it. First up, I want to see how Altrincham do this season. I really enjoyed your interview with Parky a couple of weeks ago. It's fascinating to read how he kind of feels reinvigorated. I think he's going into, you know, is it 9 seasons he's done it?
Yeah, gone flown by, unbelievable,
incredible. When as an aside, I remember Parky's first gig in management was literally around the corner from where I'm sat now. He was co-manager at Lostock Graham in the Cheshire League, and he was just winding down his playing career. But Parky was always one of these guys, and when you watch him as a player for Nantwich, he was a manager on the field. Kind of, if anyone was kind of like definitely going to be a manager, he kind of fitted that mold. So it's been amazing to follow his career since then. I'll say just to Nantwich, and then to what he's done at Altrincham. And it was really fascinating. Altrincham, I seen kind of a little mood of, a little bit disappointed to miss out. We got to the playoffs the previous season, and they just fell short last year. But in a broader context, Altrincham are still punching a little bit. They're trying to establish themselves as a full-time club. They're kind of a beacon now in the Northwest, kind of quite alone in kind of standing. So when I started covering, I mentioned it earlier, you know, we had lots of teams in the Northwest in the National League, or what was then the Football Conference, and Altrincham are kind of alone, plowing a furrow at the moment with that, and they've done an incredible job. Model transition almost to kind of full-time. But he has this constant battle every summer of losing his best players. It's happened again with Regan Linney going to Carlisle, and he's lost Alex Newby to York City. 1 or 2 others have gone as well. So it'll be really interesting to see how they respond. The National League is unforgiving, but they've got themselves a reputation now as kind of, they're in the conversation when people are talking about people who might make the playoffs. There's someone who's kind of, you know, always worked and lived up here. It's amazing to kind of see Altrincham in those conversations, and how non-league has changed so much, but they're still at the kind of forefront of the semi-pro, and now a pro club themselves. So definitely interested to see how they do. And then I have to say, Macclesfield, as I've said, Altrincham, but I think it's a fascinating story to see what a post-Robbie Savage era looks like at Macclesfield. I think if he was still there, they were going to have a real challenge in the National League North because it's such a tough league that is. We saw how difficult Marine and Radcliffe found the transition last season, although they both finished well clear of the relegation zone in the end, and be interested to see how they two kick on as an aside. But for Mac to lose somebody who kind of transcends the club in some ways, but also, let's have it right, look at what they achieved last season, a record-breaking season, winning the league in some serious style when there was lots of people waiting for Robbie, certainly on the outside, waiting for Robbie to fail. It's a very difficult job that John Rooney has got there. It's his first managerial gig, and he said he's not going to play. He wants to kind of focus on management, and doing that in the National League North is like, wow, welcome to management, even at a club that's got the resources that they've got. And I would just add that, yeah, losing Robbie Savage has been kind of grabbing the headlines, but I think losing Laurent Mendy, their captain, who's been there since the start, for those who haven't seen him, an absolute Rolls Royce of a player, but also a kind of real symbol of kind of that club's resurgence, absolutely has earned the right to try himself at a higher level. I think he'll do well in the National League, by the way, but losing somebody like that, a figurehead on the pitch, such a leader in the dressing room, has made John Rooney's life even harder. So it's definitely one to watch how they get on in that division this season, how they adapt to new surroundings. Obviously, we all know how ambitious they are, but with so much change, it's a story that I'm really looking forward to seeing kind of what that next chapter looks like for them.
Simon, can I go back to Parky? Sorry, mate. Going back to Parky, are you surprised that he hasn't had a sort of serious approach from a football league club? Because he's one that, when I get asked, when kind of the Carlisle job came up, or when Mike Williams went there from NK Dons, I got asked if there's anyone who could fit that mould from non-league, and Parky's always the one to go to, because his team at Nantwich were unbelievable. They were so good to watch. And then that's kind of, he's transferred that to a higher level at Altrincham, and as you say, went full time. And I look at him now and I think, hopefully he does it with Altrincham and gets in the Football League. But if he wasn't, if I was an AFL club, I'd be looking at him straight away.
Yeah, I think there has been interest without giving too much away. But I think also knowing Parky a little bit, he is a loyal guy. I think he absolutely is driven by, can I be the first guy to take Altrincham into the Football League? What a story that would be. And I think also that we mentioned the downside of losing his best players, but it's also kind of kept him, there's always a new challenge for him each summer, even though he stayed at the same club. And we're seeing that again now. He's having to completely rebuild his attack this season. And we'll see how that goes. It's a really tricky one, isn't it? When you see someone as a long-term manager, I always ask the same question: what kind of keeps you motivated? I interviewed Jamie Milligan last week at Bamber Bridge, asked him the same question. He's been there a long time now. How far can you realistically take Bamber Bridge? What keeps you motivated? And kind of Parky's doing that at an even higher level. I mean, he's still young enough to make that move. He went into management quite young, so there's he's got vast experience now, but he's still a relatively young guy. So I don't think that door is closed, but I do think loyal to Nantwich, had a long spell there, has had an even longer spell at Altrincham, and I think that speaks to him as a person as well. I don't know if you agree with that, Matt, but that would be my kind of response.
Yeah, 100%. I think as you were saying earlier about the fact that Altrincham almost expected to be up there, and he's almost having to say, well, hold on, this top 10 for Altrincham is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think when he says it, I was thinking, yeah, you're right, actually. I'm sort of almost guilty of it as well, but it's kind of almost you want to say to him, it's your fault because you're doing such a good job that people, because he's gone in there. They went in there when I saw them when they were getting relegated out of the National League. I think it was at Braintree that day, and it was just the club had kind of, it had all these sort of, we know about their history, we know about these great FA Cup moments they have, and they came down, obviously, then went down again, and he's gone in there and, from the whole, from such a bad point, lifted them to the right up in actually such a short space of time. My fear always is for Altrincham is that a club are gonna ring him, and he's gonna, because I think he has everything to be a Football League manager, because of what he's shown, the way he speaks, obviously his background in teaching. Makes him a fantastic communicator. He really speaks, well, when he's real clarity when you talk to him. And they have, as you say, made a part-time club into this full-time club and done it as, quite a relatively sort of smooth transition, and they are a bit of a blueprint. Other clubs talk about what Altrincham have done and how we want to follow what they have done, and he and his assistant Neil Silvell, is a massive part of that as well. And that is always just sort of the thing you worry about for Altrincham, is that one day that phone is going to ring and it's going to be an offer that they can't turn down. And that's it is. I find it really interesting that the sort of the non-league managers getting into the EFL and how that works, and how it is really hard for non-league managers to get in there. And sometimes you have to really go while you're hot. And there's managers who've been achieving things for a number of years who don't kind of get that chance, and then you sort of see someone who comes straight out of a first team in the EFL going into management as their first job in sort of League One, League Two, if not higher. And you sort of feel the frustration of some managers where they don't kind of get that chance, even part-time into full-time when they do so much. This is not something he said to me, but Andy Priest at Chorley, I think, what an amazing job he's done. He's similar, loses players every single year. They just come along, pick them up, and then next year, Chorley are in the playoffs again, because he's been doing such a good job. Obviously, he was Jamie Vermiglio's assistant before that as well. He's managed over 1,000 games. He's managed obviously in the Football League with Bury, but Do
you think then there's still a little bit of a stigma for man? I mean, we've definitely rid the stigma out of non-league players making the step up, because it's happened so frequently. I mean, Andy's a good example. He used to speak to Steve Burr about this when his star was really high. Kind of didn't really get the offers to go into the Football League when he was at his absolute kind of peak, doing that brilliant job at Kidderminster. I remember in particular, obviously at Northwich before that. And these pro clubs don't seem to still want to take a punt on guys that have paid their dues, that's right, put it in non-league. But the clubs in non-league still parachute guys in from the pro game who frankly haven't got a clue and sink very quickly. There are exceptions to that, but you see it coming a mile off when they kind of come in and they think then it is a bit of a cliche in non-league. You do need to kind of know your league, know your players, but it's a cliche for a reason, because it's true. If you're humble enough to kind of learn that, you get success. But and I think people will kind of maybe looking at Robbie Savage for that, but he did a great job in the end. But I do wonder still if there's still this kind of wall that managers don't seem to get over, and the best way to get into the Football League is to take a club up. That's how I'll get there. I'll just take a club up rather than somebody make an offer. And Parky's absolutely at the top of that list. There'll be other names as well, and it's really frustrating. It's so frustrating on their behalf.
I feel they've got to do something spectacular to be noticed. So, and I'll speak about one of Matt's favourites here, but like a Danny Cowley, for example, who I know was at Lincoln, who were a full-time club and a big club as well in National League terms, but to get them to where they did in the FA Cup and to beat the Ipswiches and the Brightons of this world, and all of a sudden people were looking at him and going, "Oh, he could be one that could step up." And obviously he's gone on to do what he's done. But I do feel as if there is, like, stigma is the right word to use. There is that, it's non-league football, and I feel as if some EFL clubs probably look at non-league football and think it's still, two big men up front, lump it along, and all that sort of stuff. And it's very sort of very basic, when we know in reality, because we see it week in, week out at all levels, there's far more to it than that. And if anything, I think now non-league managers are probably more suited to making the step into the EFL and coping with the different challenges there than ever before.
Yeah, I agree. I think Steve Burr always used to say, probably said the same to you, that are the pitches different in the Football League or something? They're different size, the goals are different size. What's I don't maybe I'm missing something, that kind of that kind of sort of sentiment. But you talk about Cowley, it was kind of like, oh, this guy, where did he come from? It's like, well, he's been managing for 10 years already. And I think about Dave Challoner, he's to get promoted into the Football League twice, and now now he's in League One pushing for the Championship. Clubs are, I don't know what it is. There seems to be some kind of sort of stigma around it still, and it's baffling, because, as you say, people have had they've got hundreds of games under their belt, have dealt with a lot more issues than you have to deal with in the Football League often, that aren't playing issues. And it's getting that chance, and then obviously then having the time as well. I think you sort of get written off really quite quickly. I think I spoke to Darryl Clark years ago. He went from, he was Salisbury manager, and then he went and was assistant at Bristol Rovers, and he kind of sort of made the point that he felt you can get pigeonholed as a non-league manager as a
Right.
non-league manager. You are a non-league manager. And he was kind of made that sort of slightly sort of, he's like, oh, why are you giving up a club you've just been promoted? He's going to be an assistant. Obviously, then he became manager, and then they came down. He got up, and now he's, he is now an EFL manager. But he sort of felt that there was like, you can get pigeonholed as a non-league manager. I sort of do feel that sometimes, that they're known as a good non-league manager or a good National League North manager or Northern Prem or whatever it is. You kind of get sort of put into that little, that's your niche. About that league. Just stay there and kind of do well there, and then you often get up and then they get binned off. It's a sort of it's a mad thing, but yeah, I think there's obviously something going on. And as you say, it's the easiest way is to get promoted.
Yeah.
With 3-2 spots. Good luck, all the best. Look at Adam Hinchwood. I think I've just led York City to 96 points. I thought it might be a great chance of becoming a Football League manager, and you're back to it on Saturday with starting again from scratch with everybody else. So they're one team I'm looking forward to seeing how they react. Talking about reactions, York City, how do they react to that sort of display last year? On the face of it, they've signed really, really well. They've kept a lot of players together. The squad together obviously kept Ollie Pearce. You'd expect them to kind of start from where they left off before that semi-final against Oldham, but it's always interesting how it does, how the dynamic does work at the beginning of the year, for sure. Where are we off to Saturday then? Have you got anywhere that you can reveal? Have you got your plans in place?
I think I'll be going to a Northern Premier League game, definitely. Not sure which yet. But yeah, I'm spend a lot of my time watching Step 3 and Step 4. Step 2 when I can. It'll be a Northern Premier League game.
Mark, you off anywhere yet?
Yeah, you're going to make us say it again, aren't you? Yeah, I'm at Gateshead Southend.
Oh, sorry, I just said that earlier. Because it was such a boring game from last year, I totally forgot.
Yeah, well, yeah, I wish I had. But no, I've just.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting now. Southend come, different expectations.
Oh, well, it will, and I do half joke, sort of. But yeah, I mean, I've just come back from a chat with Alan Armstrong about, obviously it's been an interesting summer for Gateshead, but one where they're coming through it with something approaching positivity, which is quite interesting. So the squad looks, I'm not going to say they're going to, be doing what they did last year, but I don't think it's as bad as people think from the outside. And there's a couple of signings that they're hoping to bring in that will add to a bit more experience, but there's still a good squad there. There's still good players within that side that are proven. But again, from the other side of it, yeah, you're right with Southend. I mean, we talk about reactions needed and seeing what's going to happen. I mean, heartbreaking what happened. I mean, delighted for Oldham and, great club, but heartbreaking after everything Southend had been through that they got so close to what would have been an unbelievable promotion to have it snatched away in the last sort of minutes of the season. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see how they react and how they set up this season, because another side I think should be there or thereabouts. I think when we look at National League North title contenders, maybe they're not. You might not put them in that sort of bracket yet, but certainly playoffs will be in there, because I think you're looking at York, Forest Green, maybe Carlisle if they settle in non-league. And then beyond that, maybe you look at Southend leading the next group.
Yeah, I agree. I think, as I say, there's different expectation this year possibly around Southend because of where they've been last season, how well they performed. There's going to be that sort of expectation on all of them. But I think they know that. They know it's coming. I don't think you don't play for Southend and without any expectation, even when they did have difficult times. York are the clear favourites for me at the moment. Carlisle will be interesting how they. We talk about managers coming down into the league. How does Mark Hughes adapt to going to the Braintrees, the Tamworths, that kind of thing, when it is a different challenge each day? Forest Green, Nick Horton, they've just signed from Fylde, which seems to be there's always these sort of signings on the eve of the season, it feels like, that sort of changes things. And, that's a brilliant sign. He's been sort of outstanding for Fylde and wherever he's been before that. And another one, you think, why aren't you in the Football League? But a great signing for Forest Green on the face of it. So yeah, I think it's going to be across all the leagues, going to be really, really fascinating, and kind of can't wait for it to get going. Now I'm sort of feel ready for it. I didn't feel ready for it this time last week, but now I'm quite excited to get out there and see what's going on.
See the impact spending an hour means Simo has.
We've galvanised him.
I feel like, I feel revitalised. I feel
gone full term from at the start where it was negative and we're all a bit down and a bit, look at us now, 3 smiling lads, like brilliant.
There we go. And we're going to come on to National League Cup. We don't quite have time. So. Thank you very much for joining us, chats. I really appreciate it. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. We'd love it if you can like and subscribe to the NonLeague Goalmouth and leave a positive comment about the last sort of 50 odd minutes you've spent listening to us waffle on about all things non-league. Thanks again for joining in, and we will catch you again soon.